Okay, hi everyone, we're going to start now. So good afternoon everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We are extremely excited to present to you our collaboration with the Ethi project. In brief, Ethi seeks to work with communities to co-design a content sharing and services platform for community wireless networks. We'll go into a lot more detail later in the talk, so stick around for that. We have David Johnson joining us today as a guest speaker, that you can see there. Before we start and get into all the details, I just wanted to do some housekeeping. Please can everyone mute their mics and turn off their cameras. If you have a question, please raise your hand or put it into the chat. There'll be a dedicated time for questions at the end as well. All the links we share today will be put into the chat and sent to you as an announcement later as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this is our agenda for today. Firstly, I'll introduce myself, then David will introduce himself. Following these introductions, I'll go into further details on what Ethi actually is, where the project is deployed. Then we'll dive into the tech involved, the current features and what kind of features there will be for everyone else to be involved in. Finally, we'll have time for questions. So here I am. My name is Keegan White. I am the current Vice Chairperson of the Developers Society. I've been at UCT since 2017. I finished my undergraduate in 2019 with a BSc in Computer Science and Computer Games Development. Following this, I did my honors at UCT in Computer Science, and now I'm currently doing my master's by dissertation. My research focuses on an AI-driven software-defined network that will classify and predict quality of service and quality of experience trends in networks in real time. I'll be modeling my network and training my models using real-world data from the Ethi network. My goal is for the broader community to use my work to improve network performance in these types of networks. On a bit more of a personal note, I'm a huge football fan, I love hiking, and I really enjoy any sort of exercise. I first came across the Ethi project when I was doing my honors year, and I worked on Ethi as part of my honors project, and ever since I've been enjoying working on it with David. So that's all from me. I'm going to pass over to David to introduce himself. So over to you, David.
Super. Thanks a lot, Keegan, and thanks for this opportunity to share a little bit about Ethi and what we do with DevSoc group. So yeah, I'm a senior lecturer at the moment at UCT. Well, I have an adjunct position because I'm actually, my normal daytime job is a telecommunications consultant. So if you look at my profile, you'll see what it says on my sort of LinkedIn pages. I'm interested in taking back the internet and owning data again, or getting our data back. So that's sort of like at a high level, the type of thing I'm interested in. I'm interested in a range of research problems that are related to providing access in difficult to reach places, rural areas, low income areas in the world. We've connected sort of the easy half of the world. We're at sort of just above 50% of the world being connected to the internet. And I'm interested in sort of all the interesting methods we're going to use to connect the other 50% of the world. And my research really focuses on both the connectivity aspect. So this is sort of community Wi-Fi mesh networks, things like reusing old television frequencies to get signals through trees and around mountains. And then also the aspect of how we re-architect the internet so that data sits closer to us. And Ethi is a lot about that part. But so there's both the server part, and then there's the part of how do you build networks that communities can own and maintain themselves. So I'm very interested in this community network model where the community completely runs and manages their own network. So yeah, I'll leave it there and over to you, Keegan.
Okay, thank you, David, and thanks for joining us today. So let's look at why iNethi started and why a project like this is so valuable. In countries with high levels of inequality like South Africa, the cost to communicate for lower income users is usually far higher than the cost for higher income users. So as you can see on the slide, by looking at these graphs, it is clear that people who have a constant income and meet the requirements to take out contracts from mobile service providers benefit greatly, to the extent where a user that cannot afford to take out a contract can pay up to 100 times more than one who is able to take out a contract. So this slide emphasizes the point that people who reside in the same area usually share the same interests. This example shows how much a musician can pay to upload their music to YouTube. While this may allow these musicians the possibility to reach an audience outside the community, the majority of their fans that will listen to their music would be within their community. So why not develop a local sharing platform that uses local servers to share the content? This is exactly why iNethi was born. So what is iNethi? iNethi is an open source platform that allows communities to quickly bootstrap a communication-built ISP and an open innovation platform for localization that allows communities to easily interact with fast, free local content and services. The system is federated and allows the local iNethi cloudlet system to synchronize with other local iNethi cloudlets and a global online cloud. The vision is empowering community networks or small ISPs to connect to a hybrid of high-level local value content and affordable internet in areas where they are constrained by limited internet or unaffordable internet. As you can see on the slide, there is an emphasis on co-designing when it comes to networks that iNethi seeks to build. Co-designing is a human-computer interaction term that essentially means that users, in this case, the communities in which iNethi is deployed, are engaged within a highly collaborative and iterative design process well before a given system is released. This means, as developers, we ask the community members what they want in their community, and we help them to facilitate this. The hope is that by engaging with community members, iNethi deployments will stimulate local content creation and the local economy. The data and the content that will be present in these networks and servers will also be owned by the community as a whole. This means that commercial ISPs won't be able to utilize their data for data mining. Sorry, I think someone's mic is on.
Keegan, do you have control where you can mute everyone from Teams?
Yeah, I just did. Cool. Okay. So where is iNethi? There is currently a deployment of iNethi in Cape Town. The deployment is located in Ocean View. Ocean View has around 14,000 residents as per the 2011 national census and is roughly 8,000 square meters. There are currently 10 Wi-Fi mesh hotspots available to residents. So you can see here, this is where the Wi-Fi networks are all deployed on this slide. So how does iNethi work? Okay, so the Ocean View local setup is powered by an Ubuntu server and various Docker containers. The global iNethi services are hosted using Amazon Web Services. Before diving into a detailed infrastructure diagram, let's discuss what Docker is. You can think of Docker as being a spin-off of a virtual machine. It's just far more lightweight and less resource heavy. Essentially, Docker uses OS-level virtualization to deliver software and packages called containers. Containers are isolated from one another and bundle their own software, libraries, and configuration files. They can communicate with each other through defined Docker networks, and various containers can be deployed on the same server. There are Docker containers freely available on a website called Docker Hub for almost anything you can think of, from MongoDB and MySQL all the way to WordPress. Once a program or service has been Dockerized, they can be run in any deployment environment, no matter what kind of operating system that server may use. This is why Docker is used for the iNethi project. I'd highly recommend watching a few YouTube videos on Docker to get a full insight into how awesome it really is. A great YouTube channel to look at is a channel called Network Chuck. I'll put the link in the chat for that at the end of the session. Now that you have an idea of what Docker is, let's look at the iNethi design. On the outer edge of the diagram, you can see the Ethi Cloudlet server. So this is an Ubuntu server, in the case of OceanView, that hosts all the Docker containers. The containers host various services and interact with each other. They store their data in databases that are also running in Docker containers. People that are within the range of the mesh Wi-Fi in OceanView can access these services using various domain names. These domain names are resolved using a DNS running within a Docker container as well. It is important to note that all the data in these Docker containers is mounted to the server. In general, if a Docker container were to shut down, all the data within it is lost, so it is vital to save your data to your machine. So now we're going to look at the current features. So I'm going to pass over to David.
Great, yeah. So before I dive into the features, it's sort of important to know that when we started building Ethi, we did this with a series of workshops with the community to find out the kind of things they wanted. And we worked with educators and musicians and people who run businesses. And we realized that what we want to do first is create very kind of generic services that are sort of parallel to, or at least similar to services that you get on the internet. So we had sort of content neutral services like that are similar to Dropbox, similar to WhatsApp for chat, similar to, let's say, Facebook for social networking. So these services that you see there, Ethi Share is essentially like Dropbox for people to share files, and everyone needs to back up and share files. Ethi Social, initially we used Diaspora, which is kind of similar to Facebook. We're now more leaning towards using some of the social networking features on Nextcloud. So for that, we're using things like Element. And then, so these are all to help people communicate with each other. And then there's a lot of services that are already available with good content that you can get from the internet. For example, Wikipedia, Khan Academy. So they all live in what's called Internet in a Box, which is another project that allowed you to sort of deploy all these services on a Raspberry Pi and put it in a school and give people access to a lot of this high-value internet content. So we put that on Ethi as well. The system also has essentially a full ISP set of tools. So we have a voucher system in Ethi Voucher, which allows people to print vouchers and buy internet for 20 Rand a gigabyte, which is way cheaper than the current cellular services where people are paying between 150 and sort of 250 Rand. I mentioned Ethi Chat, so that's using Element. That's built into Nextcloud as well. Another important feature is this ability to synchronize. So if you put some files on the global, let's say Ethi Share, it will auto-synchronize to the local server inside OceanView. So I actually did that last night. I got a whole lot of science videos from the Science Center in UKZN, and I dragged it to the global server, and within 1 hour, 2 gigabytes of videos had synchronized to OceanView and were available for free to anyone passing one of the Wi-Fi hotspots. So that's very useful, especially with a lot of teachers who live outside OceanView, to share some of their teaching videos that they've uploaded. So during lockdown, for example, a lot of teachers uploaded videos of their lessons to Ethi Share, and this was synchronized to the Ethi server inside OceanView, and kids could watch education videos for free. I think I'll leave it there for now. I could talk for hours on Ethi, so I'll stop.
David, do you want to talk about the wish list and what you wanted?
Super, yeah. This is the part I like the most, because this is where I can co-opt you guys to help. So most of the features we've built so far are really been volunteer work, student projects. blood, sweat, and tears of just people who've been building bits and pieces. And there's a lot of features that we still want. So I'm gonna go through them. So the one thing that's irritating is a lot of these services have username passwords for each service. And as you know, with username passwords, people forget them. And you're going to have multiple username and passwords that people have to remember for each service. So what we wanted to do is create a single sign-on type of environment. And there is a service called KeyCloak, which is SAML authentication, which I've installed, but I haven't integrated with many of the services. And many of them do support SAML authentication. It's just a job that needs to be done to integrate it with KeyCloak. So that's what I'll call single sign-on type of environment that needs to be implemented. The other thing we want to do is create a builder system so that anyone in the world who wants to deploy an Ethi can pick and choose a bunch of services they want. So they might say, I want a file sharing service, I want a chat service, and I want this music sharing app, and kind of drag and drop it onto a sort of GUI interactive page and click build, and it will build a unique Ethi setup for them that they can flash to their hard drive with their Ethi server, or perhaps onto an AWS server. And then linked to that is a repository system that works with the builder system. So it's essentially each package, and these will basically be Docker container wrappers that describe the whole service. But we need to have this repository system that people can go to and pull packages of services they want. So they'll build at the beginning the services they want, but later on they might want to add services, and they can go to the repository and pull specific packages they want. Another service the teachers have requested is learning management platforms, and Moodle is one of the most popular ones. So that's another one that needs to be added. Things like that are often not difficult because there might already be a Moodle Docker, and it just needs to be slightly tweaked to the Ethi environment. The other thing I should mention is Keegan's done some great work to get a virtual machine. I don't know if you're going to talk a bit about that, Keegan.
Yeah, I'm going to do a demo later as well.
Oh, okay. So there's a great environment that helps you to actually develop some of these services that you can do on your own machine, but Keegan will talk about that. So next one, yeah, we found often teachers upload videos, and a lot of the formats are just not great for cell phones. They're just too large, or the resolution isn't quite right. So we just need a back-end automatic tool that just reformats the videos so that they'll all work on phones. And a few people have said that they would like to advertise their business. So on the splash page, we'd like a kind of a ticker that just sort of flashes up an advert, and every couple of seconds a new one appears. At the moment, payment is all with cash, and cash is terrible and not safe. So we want to do more integration with payment APIs and things like Time Bank. I think is a great bank because you can quickly get a card, and there are apparently APIs that you can use to talk to Time Bank. So integrate that with the voucher system. And our current voucher system is a bit old, and we also need to upgrade to the latest it's called Radius Desk, and that's a little bit fiddly and needs a bit of work. So some of these are, I would say, sort of 2 or 3 days, maybe even 1 day short projects, like upgrading Radius Desk, maybe adding Moodle. Things like integrating KeyCloak might be a 1 month piece of work. So they're all sort of different degrees, and there is a list, and that keeps growing. and there's a link. And what I'll also do is maybe estimate the effort in brackets. Something I just realized I should add to each of these tasks. And the list keeps growing. And if you have ideas of interesting things you think could be added, that will also be great. Give us suggestions of services you might have seen and you think those would be great to host on this localized server platform. Okay, over to you, Keegan.
Okay, thanks, David. I just saw, can the link be sent in the chat?
Oh, yeah,
yes,
I'll do that.
I'll put all the links down. And then we'll send out an announcement later with a link to a form where you can kind of say what project you're interested in, that you want to help with the Ethi, and then there'll be a space if you want to recommend any services that you think will be helpful. So that will be sent out later. So now onto the exciting bit. How can everyone that's here get involved in this awesome project? So the first steps is where we'll be communicating, which is on the DevSoc Slack channel. There's one dedicated specifically to Ethi. This is where we can chat, share ideas, dedicate projects, and help each other. Once you've filled in the form that I mentioned before, decided what project you want to work on, we can then move on to the next step, which would be downloading the Ethi virtual machine that David mentioned earlier. So this is a development environment you can run in your local machine that has Docker installed and mirrors the OceanView server. So it runs the same version of Ubuntu, essentially. This will allow you to experiment with Docker, test your code, pretty much do everything so that you know once you push it to the server, it will actually run and there won't be any issues. So I'm going to take you through a quick demo of the virtual machine, and then I'll send the link as well to where you can download it. It's quite a big file. It's about 5 gigabytes. So if we go here, okay, so this will be what you'll see when you sign in. The username is Ethi, the password's Ethi, all lowercase. And then, so on the desktop, I've put a dev folder here. Within this dev folder, there's just another folder called Docker. And here are just some basic Docker containers that I've set up. So when you download this image, it will already be set up for you. So you just need to run this bash script called vm_resume. There's also a build all script. So if you wanted to start fresh, you could use this and link it to Docker containers. So the way you'll do this is you'll navigate to the Docker folder in your terminal, and then you can see everything here. Okay, so you see net data, which allows you to just monitor network data going in and out of the virtual machine. You see an Nginx folder, which is used to host a website, which I'll show you now. Smoke ping, all these things are just like kind of standard Docker containers you can kind of play around with. And the most important one here is a Docker container called Traffic that is used to resolve domain names and things like that. So these are all things that you can go and Google and ask us questions about. I just wanted to show you the general architecture of the virtual machine. So if I'm go and type in here, I run the resume. So I have everything up and running now. So when I run the resume script, it just tells me everything is up to date. So you can type in docker ps-a, and it shows you everything that's up and running on your system. So over here, you can see there's Ethi smoke ping, Ethi/Nginx, Ethi net data, and Ethi traffic. So you have all these Docker containers running. Now the important question is, what do they actually do? So when I navigate outside of my virtual machine and I go to my normal desktop and I go to my terminal, the most important thing that you're going to have to do is on your machine, you're going to have to locate to wherever your DNS settings are. So mine's there. So except like etc/hosts for Macs and any sort of Ubuntu or Linux-based computer that could work. I haven't tested it on Windows, so that's a job for you guys that have Windows. So there's probably a much nicer way to do this, but this is just what I've done. So I've taken the URLs that are set within the Docker files that you can just go look at in that dev folder, and I've just pointed them to the IP address of the Docker container. So if I go back into, sorry, the IP address of the virtual machine. So if I go back into the virtual machine and I run this and I scroll up to over here. So for a Mac, this is how it connects to the outside world. And you can see on my local network, it's running on that IP address. So now I go back to this file and there's that IP address and it points to splash.internal.local. So now if I go to my browser and I go to splash.internal.local, you'll see the Ethi splash page. Now, if I wanted to look at the Docker containers that are running inside my virtual machine, I go to trafic.internal.local and I can go here to routers and I can see the different things that are hosted. So over here, netdata, splash, smokeping, and trafic. So those are the things that I have up and running now. And obviously,
just one thing. So you'll notice, like if you go to the splash page now, there's all the services or icons for the services that are on the current web-based iNethi. I sent a link to splashg.inethi.net. That's the running server. And a lot of those services aren't yet on the virtual machine. In fact, most of them. And I'll be working to port them to the virtual machine. Shouldn't take that long, but there is a GitHub that Keegan set up for the VM, and we're slowly busy moving all the current iNethi services to that VM. And then some of those splash page links will resolve. But for now, it's really just a sort of basic thinned out version that you can start playing with, and has everything there that routes the request to the Docker container. That's the kind of most important key component, Trafic.
Yeah, so if you go look inside the virtual machine, inside here under HTML, this is everything that has to do with that splash page that comes up. And if you look in the index.html file, obviously, like David said, if you go to the splash page, you can see all these services here. But if I click on it, it'll link to something.
Goes to the global version on AWS. Yeah. Right. So it will actually work, but it's not using the local.
Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of everything you need to know about the virtual machine. I posted a link in the chat now, and they are quite detailed. I wrote up a README with quite detailed instructions. So if you didn't kind of follow what I was going through here, there are very detailed instructions in that file. But again, once you join the Slack channel, which Chelsea sent a link to in the chat, you can also obviously ask us anything to do with that. But so that's kind of the virtual machine for now. It just makes it a lot easier for everyone that's working on it to make sure that everything will work. So
just another comment on the VM. So the way we see the development working is you kind of develop on the local virtual machine, test it out, see that everything's working. And then once it's stable and your intervention looks like it's working fine, then we can move it to the actual global iNethi server and the one that's running inside OceanView. So that's kind of the development path that we'll follow.
So I think also another big thing to think about is getting involved in this project gives you a lot of real world experience, which obviously you don't get with a lot of university projects and things unless you iNethi was an honors project last year that I was lucky enough to get involved in. So if you want to get involved in that and have some real world experience, get involved with Docker, which is also a very, very big part of a lot of organizations. It's kind of a good opportunity for you to do that. So now I'm going to open the floor to you guys. Let me know if you have any questions for David or myself. And thank you for joining us today. So feel free to type it in the chat or raise your hand and we'll get to you. Sure, I see a hand. Given, is that you? You can go ahead and speak.
Okay, hi Keegan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I missed the first part, like the beginning part of this meeting. So I just want to clarify. So Unity itself, what is it exactly? Because I missed that part, and I feel like that was a very important part to this introduction. What is it exactly? Because I see that they do have like all these other services, but as a whole, what is it exactly? And what's like the main objective? Because I missed the first parts of this meeting. I want to find out.
I can sum it up in two sentences.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, iNethi is really got two parts to it. So it's a way of allowing communities to quickly bootstrap a locally owned network in the community, and a way to allow communities to share and access free, locally relevant content. So that's the sort of two parts. To easily build an ISP and to have all of these localized services in the community, hosted locally in the community.
Okay. So is this quite similar to Free Basics or Internet.org, which was like a Facebook thing where they were looking to provide free internet services to like many parts of Africa and stuff like that?
No, it's quite different, because Free Basics is really just focusing on allowing users to get to internet content. It's in a walled garden, a certain list of internet content that Free Basics provides you access to. The content isn't hosted locally in the community with Free Basics, whereas iNethi hosts the content and the services inside the community, and that's so it's an entirely different architecture.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I see, Willie, you asked a question. You wanted to sign up as teams and things. So yeah, I think you'll fill in a form, and then I'll look at all the responses and see who wants to be part of the projects and things. And then I think it will be nice to group you guys up. So, because obviously if you haven't worked with Docker, and Docker in general is quite challenging to work with at times, so it'll be nice to be part of teams. And then obviously we can all collaborate with each other on the Slack channel, which Chelsea linked above. So yeah, definitely teams would be a great idea. But if anyone else has any questions, feel free to ask.
I have a question. I mean, I know I meant to answer questions, but I want to throw it out to everyone. I'm curious to know how many people have chosen to sort of leave some of the large platforms like Google and Facebook, maybe Dropbox, large internet platforms, and tried to just either as an experiment or actually seriously trying to leave, host their own mail, their own file server, and use that as part of their sort of daily life. And what the experience has been for people. Just curious if anybody's tried.
Well, personally, I created my own NAS at home to store my own files and that sort of thing on a Raspberry Pi, but that didn't. I don't know. It worked okay-ish, but it wasn't great on phones and things like that. So I guess ease of use kind of trumped my own innovation in that sense.
Yeah.
Sure. I think someone raised their hand. Go ahead. I can't see who it was, but you can go ahead and chat.
Hi. So I have tried hosting my own emails. So I bought a domain, and then I tried configuring it so that when I get emails, when emails are sent to that domain, I can view them on my local PC. But then there was something about so the thing, I didn't finish the process because I was supposed to talk to my internet service provider. I don't know what was going on, so I just gave up. But then I tried to read my emails locally.
Okay, interesting. So it's challenging to get all the networking bits to work well. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because email is kind of, in a way, one of the oldest internet services. And weirdly enough, all email used to be hosted at universities, at companies. It was never a global service. So hosting your own email is just going back to how it always used to work, which is kind of funny.
Okay, so yeah, I think if anyone else has any questions, we also, as the Developers Society, will be around in the Slack channel now for the next hour or so, if anyone wants to pop a message in there. And we'll send out the form, all the links, everything as an announcement later. So you can all sign up there, and if you're interested. And then obviously this was recorded, so for anyone that missed the introductions and things like that, we'll put it on the Vula tab under lectures. But thank you, everyone. David, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think my last thoughts are, well, thanks everyone for joining, and I really would love to hear there's this wish list that I sent out, but I'd love to hear people's ideas on services you think would be great. Obviously, any kind of service we test in the community, we don't push, a service just because we think it will be cool. But sometimes there's services that the community might not know about, and you might think, hey, here's a great service that could help with something like setting up a radio station, and I've played with something like that, and I would like to see it on an Ethi. So we'd love to hear your ideas as well.
Yeah, great. That sounds good. And then obviously, if you guys want to communicate and do that sort of thing, just pushing again the Slack channel. We want to get more interaction on there with everyone. And feel free to ask anything, whether it's just a general question about Docker or anything in general, we'll be there to help. And then Chelsea just sent a reminder to put it under the actual Inethi channel, not under one of the other ones. So just join that channel using, you'll see it's all listed there, and then just join that channel and go ahead and pop any questions there. But thank you everyone for joining, and thanks so much, David, for taking time out of your day to join. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. And yeah, I hope to see you guys on the Slack channel.
Super.